expected today on Congress's historic tax reform package? Republican leaders expect the bill on the president's desk ahead of their self-imposed Friday deadline. Joins now Senator David Perdue, the only former Fortune 500 CEO in Congress. Senator, it's good to see you. It's been a long road. Today is the day, in your view?
Good morning. Yeah, it's a historic day in Washington. People are expecting us to get this done, and I think we will, Joe.
Even without McCain, I guess you got Collins now. You figure Flake's a yes, finally?
Yeah, I think we've got the votes in the Senate side. Our hearts go out to John. I know he would be here if it were at all possible.
We're hearing a couple of, there's always going to be criticism, but the latest criticism coming in some different ways that there's going to be years of gaming the system now with tax accountants because of what's in the bill, and really doesn't simplify things. You accept that premise?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, honestly, this is a simplification. I mean, my goodness, only 30% of taxpayers today itemize, and that's projected to go down to 10%. So, Joe, saying it another way, 90% of all taxpayers will use a standard deduction, which was doubled. This is by any definition simplification, but that's not the only goal. The big goal is to get us competitive again. Getting our corporate rate to be competitive with the rest of the world is the best thing we can do for the American worker. And I think that's what you're seeing in some of these optimism numbers now. The second thing is getting rid of this repatriation tax is the best thing we can do as well.
Right.
And then the last thing, this is indeed a tax cut for the middle class. A couple with 2 children who make the median income of $73,000 are going to get a 60% tax cut, right, Joe. And a single mom with 1 child is going to get a 75%
Senator,
tax cut.
the Journal says if you could have, and in a perfect world, it's the Journal editorial board, they say you should have cut the top rate not from 39.6 to 37, but you should have cut it to 28 and just done nothing for the pass-throughs. Just let them come in at 28. And then you wouldn't have this problem where you've got a lot of not really rich people, but just sort of wealthy people. Tax rates are going up 15%, 20% on some of these people in blue states because of SALT and for other reasons. It is a big tax hike on certain people that voted Republican.
Well, if you listen to the other side, Joe, I mean, they're saying this is nothing but a tax break for the rich.
I know.
So you're exactly correct. The math works exactly like you're saying it does. And it's one of the problems, frankly, I had with the system. I mean, capital formation is a large part of this effort, and that runs counter to that. You're exactly right.
Hey, Senator, there's no question that this is going to help companies and corporations, and there's no question that the rate comes down for the middle class. I don't think that's in dispute. I think there's a larger question, though, of how this hits the, I like to say, it soaks the rich, but it doesn't soak the richest. And sort of to the extent that you believe that the tax system encompasses the values of both fairness and this country, when you look at the donor class, given the pass-through issue, given even the real estate loophole that emerged over the weekend, does that not concern you that people are going to look at this plan and say there's something fundamentally unfair about it?
Well, I don't know how to do it any better than what we've done. I mean, what we've done is attack a system where 1% of the taxpayers pay over 40% of all taxes paid, the top 1%. So, and honestly, many of their taxes will go up, just as Joe just mentioned. Our focus here was to get competitive again, and the person that's going to benefit the most in this tax plan is the person that gets a job, guys.
Well, I'm not arguing that point. The point I'm arguing very directly is if you're a billionaire today, that your tax rate from a percentage, given the games that you can play with both pass-throughs and S-corps and other things, puts you in a materially better position than an employee that's on a W-2.
Oh, I'm not willing to accept that at all.
You're not?
No, not at all. And if you do the math, and we've got examples of that, that's not the case. And look, by the way, even if that were the case, that's not a problem because what you're trying to do is get capital formation. And what those people are doing is investing in the economy, creating jobs, and helping us become competitive again. Look, we've had 8 years of the weakest economic growth in our history. We have to do something fundamentally different.
Senator, with respect, if I'm a company known as what's called a loan out, where there's a company, we'll call it Andrew Ross Sorkin, Inc., you contract with my company, and effectively I loan my services to you. I can effectively lower my tax rate materially relative to what I would be as a W-2 payer.
Well, what you have right now, well, I don't accept that at all. I'd like to see that example. But what you have today is a lot of our intellectual property is owned offshore. And what we've done is given incentives to bring those back. We're cutting a lot of the games out. We took over $1.3 trillion of tax breaks for corporations out of the tax code, guys. That's not
I'm
even
not disputing
written
the
about.
corporate piece of it. Let me ask you a separate
Well,
question.
that includes the pass-through.
You
That
look at
includes a lot of the
you look at
deduction for
the real
pass-throughs.
estate provision that was put in. Some people even describe it as snuck in over the weekend, where effectively one industry goes down to the pass-through 20%. How do you explain that?
Well, it's a pass-through. I mean, what we're trying to do is get these people.
Why for that single industry relative to every other industry in the world?
Andrew, it's not just a single industry. And what we tried to do is to eliminate some of the imbalances that we had in there. I'm not familiar with what happened over the weekend, but I will tell you this. This is the most balanced tax plan I've seen. And in fact, over 30 years, we've seen the detriments of a tax plan that was an amalgamation of over 100 years of these incentives and disincentives, frankly. And we tried to clean a lot of that up. And I think this makes us much more competitive. Are there loopholes in it? I mean, are there imbalances there? We'll find out. But I don't think this has as many as we have in the current code.
Hey, Senator, if you're going to concede that corporations are the donor class, and this entire tax bill was about lowering the corporate rate, you're never going to be able to refute the other side saying that it benefits the donor class. So, you know, that's what, and if you're going to say that corporations are wealthy people, then they are getting the tax break. So just by saying that the donor class is getting the tax break, that's why you're doing it in the first place, is to get corporations more globally competitive.
Joe,
so it's like arguing against that. You can't win. There's just no way you're going to be able to win.
If the corporations aren't healthy, there are no jobs. And by corporations, I'm talking about sub-S.
I understand. There's preaching to the choir. I understand why you want to cut corporate tax.
Well,
I'm just saying that
it's
going to be called the donor class by people that don't like it, and it's going to be called the rich.
We're taking 6 million people at the lower end of the scales off the tax rolls. Today, 52% of households pay no income tax.
Right.
And we're adding 6 million to that. So this cannot be just about the donor class. That's a false argument.
I understand, but no, you're missing my mind. My point is that if you're going to call corporations a donor class, then you're obviously it's tailored to the donor class because you're cutting corporate tax rates. But that's what we're trying to do in the first place. Anyway, thank you, Senator. And you know, Georgia Tech didn't even show up. We talked
Not
about
this
it.
year.
No, they didn't. You said they would against Georgia. So now, are you a Georgia fan now?
Go Dogs.
Oh, yeah, you barely got that.
See you guys.
All right, thanks, Senator.
So